This is an age of darkness. A world of fear, power, and death. But a few forge their destiny. Medieval total war.
Hello folks and welcome to Medieval Total War. I am Step and this is going to be part 1 of my early campaign where I'm playing as the Danes. For those of you who are longtime viewers and subscribers to this channel, hey, welcome back. It's good to have you as always. And for those of you who are new to this channel and might be wondering what's going on around here, as you can see, I play a lot of Shogun 1 and Medieval 1 Total War, and that's because I am exploring this franchise for the first time and I'm kind of documenting it here on YouTube. The way I'm going about it is that I'm celebrating each of the game's 20th anniversaries in succession, and then also sometimes playing the older games, you know, while I'm doing that. So I'm currently still playing Shogun, even though I am focusing right now on Medieval. But once I switch to the newer game, I essentially focus mainly on that game for its quote-unquote game life. Which might be, you know, 2 years for these earlier games. Later on, I think it might only be for 1 year, depending on whenever the next Total War game comes out. But yeah, this is me especially kind of exploring a franchise that I've been wanting to get into for quite a while. I took a long break from video gaming. About 15 years I didn't play video games, but I was still like watching video games on YouTube and such, and I wanted to get back into it, and I needed to like create something though to kind of motivate me to get back into playing video games, and this channel's been kind of the catalyst for that. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of people that used to, you know, grew up playing these games, and it's been really fun to hear you know, the stories of the nostalgia coming back to them, you know, growing up playing these games. I wish that I'd done that. I was old enough to, but I just wasn't PC gaming when I was a kid. I grew up on a Mac. We had a Mac family, so I was playing Nintendo, Donkey Kong, Perfect Dark, GoldenEye. I did not grow up playing PC games, and I regret that in some ways, but in other ways, that just means that I get to enjoy these games for the first time now, which is also kind of cool. So I'm digging it. Anyway, let's go on into single player and let's start a new campaign. I do play my campaigns on expert difficulty for now. I think that the Total War games will eventually get to a point where I don't know if I want to play the hardest difficulty all of the time, but for Shogun 1 and Medieval 1, so far it's been very enjoyable, I think. So I have been playing early period so far, and I've been playing Glorious Achievements. I like this. I might at some point play a campaign that's on the Conquer or the Domination mode or whatever. Maybe for a certain faction, but I can't do that for every single faction because then I would just get bored. I don't want to paint the map over and over and over and over and over again. I want different objectives. I want kind of different goals. I want different play styles. And I'm still experimenting here. Like, considering that I'm still relatively new to the game, you know, I have maybe 600 or 700 hours into the game, I'm still figuring out what's more fun to play. And I know that some of my earlier campaigns have been on the slower side. I think that can change depending on the faction that I'm playing. So I'm still experimenting with this, and I'm going to keep going in this direction with the Glorious Achievements setup. So for the background here, I read off all of this during my Almaheads campaign. It's very long. It's a good setup if you want to understand a little bit more about the period of this time. In fact, if what I could do is just go a little slower here, and you can pause if you want to read this yourself. But I'm not gonna really take the time here because it's very long. It's very long, and as you're about to find out, I have another thing to read after this. It's also pretty long, so Let me just keep going here. Almost towards the end. And there we go. So I will be playing the Danes. I just have the one province up here at the top, and I'm pretty isolated, but we can talk more about that once we get into the faction selection screen. Here we are, and this is what I will read off to you. So faction difficulty rating moderate. Playing the Danes in this period is no harder or easier than the difficulty level set for the campaign. In the early period, the Danes have their best relative starting position. They have territory nearby in Scandinavia that can be conquered quickly and is relatively easy to defend. Denmark is the only land route to the north. The Danes also have exclusive access to Vikings and longbows. While these will become outmoded over time, for the first years of play they are simply better than forces available to other factions. This advantage may be short-lived, but they are vital to an early aggressive policy and give the ability to seize chances. The lands of the north are uncompromising, and they have always produced superlative fighting men. The Vikings, the Normans, the Rus in Novgorod and Moscow, and even the Varangian Guard in far-off Constantinople are all Norsemen of one sort or another. As navigators, traders, and warriors, Norsemen have few rivals in the world. Although their raiding voyages are now nearly at an end, Denmark is now established as the strongest of the Scandinavian kingdoms, having crushed the pagan Wends in northern Germany and their own pagans in the wilder lands to the north. The kings of Denmark have also cleverly avoided being absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire. The Danes can do well if they can avoid being overrun by imperial forces outside Scandinavia. They have a reasonably good chance of securing a mini-empire from Scandinavian and Baltic coastal provinces. Denmark is the only land bridge in Scandinavia, making the defense of new possessions relatively straightforward. Their position at the mouth of the Baltic makes development as a maritime power an attractive and possibly vital option. If the Baltic can be controlled, then Danish armies can move at will to any point along the coast. The independent duchies and principalities can be picked off and then used to expand Danish power further along the northern periphery of Europe. This policy can bring a Danish ruler into competition with Poland, Novgorod, and the Holy Roman Empire, as these may be trying to acquire the same lands on the Baltic coast. Southern expansion into the rich provinces of central and western Germany is also an option for a strong Danish ruler, but one that must be carefully timed to avoid an imperial backlash. It is a strategy that works well when imperial authority has collapsed. Finally, it is less than a century ago that Danish rulers could also claim the kingship of England. Before the coming of the Norman overlords, descendants of the Vikings themselves, who now rule there. Perhaps these old claims could be renewed and a new maritime kingdom across the northern seas could be created. Wherever a ship can go, there could be a way for the Danish to make a profit, or a killing. And without further ado, let's just jump on into the campaign. For those of you who are new to the channel, I do want to give a fair warning that my first episodes for these campaigns can be very, very long-winded. I like to explain things, I like to talk about my strategies and my options, and the units and unit comparisons and other relative neighbors and their strategies and objectives. I can go on and on and on. And for this first episode, it might only be one turn that gets played, during this episode. So I don't want to waste your time. If you want, if you're trying to look for something a little bit more fast-paced, you might want to wait for the second episode. But yeah, there you go. So for the Glorious Achievements objectives, it starts off for me very simple. There's no special objectives. I will make points off of Denmark. Obviously, that's my only province that I own. I will make 5 points off of it, which is actually, that's fine. That's okay. What's key, though, is that I will make 1 point for every province that I conquer. And that's pretty good. Some factions, for instance, for comparison, will have to conquer like 3 or 4 or 5 provinces to make 1 point. So to make 1 point off of each province that I conquer is really, really good, actually. So that's all that I have for now for objectives. That will start to fill out as we get further into the campaign. I think in the high and late period, I will have more variety of objectives. Like I will have some trade objectives regarding the North Sea, I believe, And I think there's a Kalmar Union objective as well, of course, where I have to, make sure I have control over the Kalmar Union countries like Sweden and Norway. And there might be some more like Baltic-centered objectives. I can't quite remember. I don't know for sure. I have played this campaign before, but I did not play it to completion. Overall, it was a pretty relaxed affair. Not gonna lie, it didn't seem like it was too challenging. I got to the point where, the Vikings had made contact with me, and I sort of defended myself, and then my points started to catch up to the other factions around me. And that is one thing, is that the Danish opening is pretty slow just because of how poor we are. So it can be kind of tedious to really get the trade going, but once it gets going, it can be very powerful. The thing is that all of the Danish provinces, or all of the provinces that you should be looking at conquering, have trade goods. And trade in this game is very, very, very powerful. It's like OP, and it's something that, frankly, I'm kind of looking at a way, maybe for some factions, maybe at playing kind of around rushing the trade in the Navy, just because it's so meta. And, meta is fun. It's fun to play with the meta until you get bored of it. And, maybe with another faction, I will look for ways to play around the meta. But with Denmark, this is the faction for that playstyle. It really is. Like, it was mentioned in the description for the Danes that they have access to... Oh, we don't have longboats right away. I thought we did. Well, that can be fixed. Yeah, I will need to build a keep, which is the second tier fortification building, and then I'll have to build the boat builder building, and that will allow me to build longboats, and that's going to allow me to get my trade going. And the thing with longboats, if I remember correctly, it's just that they have really low upkeep, so I think that that's kind of the key there. But we're not quite there yet. We should take Sweden and then Norway first, and then we can worry about building boats. Let's see, so it's tempting also to kind of rush Finland and take out the Novgorods before they become too strong. It is very, very tempting to do that, but I have to say, the Novgorods have a very strong early game army. I can talk more about that in maybe a later episode, but for now, I don't want to get too bogged down in details here. I already, as I mentioned, can get very bogged down in details. So let's focus on, where we are immediately. These are rebel provinces, so they will be easy enough for me to take. And then below me is going to be the Holy Roman Empire. And it's huge. The Holy Roman Empire is kind of in a tough spot because they are bordered to the west by the French, and to the south by the Italians, and to the east by the Hungarians, and to the north by me. So they are in a tough spot. They are. And sure, they're big, but I don't know if that's like a good thing in the beginning. Having a big empire can be kind of tricky. So I'm not too worried about them, to be honest. And then if I look at my province itself, Denmark, what is it making? 162. It has trade goods right here, butter and then salt fish. So those are items that I can make some money off of once I set up my trade. I can bump up taxes a little bit. I don't want to really go to 109. That seems a little low. But high seems okay. 178 florins. And this region does make it does when I train it, or when I build a longboat here, I will get +1 valor, so that's pretty good as well. Make my boats a little bit better in combat. Let's see, anything else? Anything else? Nothing too vital here about Denmark. And then the troops that I have, or I can start with my king, actually. So, yeah, my King Olaf the First, he is 38 years old, he is married, he has 4 influence. 4 influence is going to, well, I can read this little description right here. So you are recognized as a significant power in the world, but some countries still find it acceptable to politely ignore your suggestions. Perhaps a more forceful foreign policy is required. Now, this seems to indicate that influence has some bearing on your diplomatic abilities, and I have my doubts about that. I would be curious to hear your suggestions or your opinions on this, but I don't know if this is true. But again, let me know if you think it is. What I do know that influence does is it does directly affect the loyalty of the generals under your command. And that's the primary thing that I know about influence. Now, it has been suggested over and over and over again that influence might also impact the stats of your heirs. If the influence of your king is high when your heir becomes of age, then he might also have good stats. I also have my doubts about that. My guess is that factions might be more predisposed towards having, either good traits or bad traits, or maybe high dread or high influence. Like the Byzantines, I just got done playing them, and they really had a lot of high influence family members throughout the entire game until the very late game, when like the stats got bad. And it felt like that was written into the game, and from an historical standpoint, you can sort of see why. At a certain point in Byzantine history, the leadership wasn't great. And I'm curious if that's just hard-coded for all factions. Maybe with some variance, some variety, some randomness thrown in, but an overall like hard-coded, like this faction gets most of this or something like that. That's my guess, just off of my experience. But frankly, I've seen no one else really back me up on this. So I don't know if that's just my imagination or what. Like I've seen the English, don't they have like a crap ton of dread? And don't the French get just a crap ton of piety? Again, I don't know exactly, but that's kind of what I'm aiming at. With the Danes, I don't know. We will have to keep an eye on it. They have 4 stars he's a 4-star general, the king is. The stars is going to add to the valor of the units that he commands. Valor gives a stat boost, so each point of valor is going to give +2 morale and +1 attack and +1 dread. I'm sorry, what did I just say? +1 attack and +1 defense. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I've learned this recently. Apparently I was wrong this whole time. Valor, when it's given by the general, will only increase the attack and the defense. Valor, when it's achieved through a province or a building, that's going to give the +2 morale and then the +1 attack and +1 defense. But for them generals, it's only going to be giving the attack and the defense boosts. It's confusing. Yeah, so the thing is that there is going to be separate morale buffs from certain traits that the generals may get. So in his case, oh, perfect. This is a great example. Natural leader. So he leads his men from the front, gaining much respect and inspiring his men to greater efforts. +2 morale and then +1 loyalty. So there you have it. He's a natural leader. The men that he commands will be getting +2 morale. Now, again, here's the thing. Nowhere in here does it say that +2 morale is gifted to his soldiers. You just have to go into the battle stat screen itself and see that, yes, they're getting +2 morale from him. In fact, I should double check that just to make sure. But yeah, I think that +2 morale isn't just for his unit. I think it is for all of the men that he commands, is what I think. Anyway, piety. This has to do with his relations with it's just better if I read it, I suppose. How much support a religious population will offer this man. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So like if we look at the zeal of a province, 48%. Now, piety, my understanding is that it doesn't actually have any relation to the percentage of people following your faith in a province, which is kind of weird. It's a little bit not what you'd expect. So we are 98% Catholic here in Denmark. We are 2% heretics. So gotta fix that. But piety, my understanding is that it has nothing to do with the percentage of my religion. It has to do with the zeal of the population itself. And that's regardless of whether it's a zeal of a Muslim province or an Orthodox province, which is weird, isn't it? But I think that high piety, what this is going to do is that for a highly zealous province, it's going to increase the population loyalty of that province. As for what exactly is considered to be high piety or high zeal is sort of left up to be a mystery. I'm still trying to figure this out myself. I'm assuming that anything lower than 50% zeal is considered low, and therefore having a highly pious ruler isn't going to matter too much, which is good because a piety of 3 also, again, I'm assuming this is a low. It's just that it's hard to see. This is why it's like complicated because it depends on the stats. Like 3 dread is like fine. 3 piety is low. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Like piety, this, you have to kind of read it here. It says, his continued ignorance of the divine means the devout will in turn ignore him in his hour of need. So that sounds low, right? Dread is the more simple way of calculating or raising your population's loyalty. It's pretty simple. The higher dread, the more loyal your people will be. And that's it. On first glance, he exudes charm and easy smiles, but there are stories told that this man's past hides darker deeds. However, there is no evidence to back up this suspicion. And as I just said, 4 dread is actually kind of decent. You're not going to see like a ton of that, unless I think if you're playing the English. I think that they have a lot of dreadful rulers. Command. It is obvious to see that a devious military mind is emerging. We are witnessing the development of a superb commander. And then acumen. His proficiency at economics and people management will ensure that the economy would not suffer, but it is unlikely to prosper either, which is, again, weird, because 4 acumen is kind of decent. What this will do is it will boost the income of the nation. So this all might be a little bit confusing because here's the deal. This right here is a governor titleship for the province of Denmark. Now I cannot grant this to my king, and I cannot grant this to any of my family members. I can only grant it to unit captains, like this guy. Oh man, you guys are gonna have fun listening to me try to pronounce this. Hardikun's Scott Kanung. There we go, nailed it. Or Sten Hunger. Oh, I got that one. That's easy. Either of these guys could potentially be the governor of Denmark. I'm not going to make either of them the governor of Denmark because my baseline acumen that I'm looking for is 4 acumen. That's the person that I want to be the governor of Denmark, is someone with 4 acumen. Just because that's going to make the decent amount of money off of Denmark itself. Now, they can get higher acumen through traits, but 4 is the baseline that I like to look for. And so if the governor's acumen is what influences each individual province, then what is the point of the nation's ruler's traits, right? Like dread or piety or acumen? Well, it's a small percentage spread throughout the entire kingdom itself. So like each individual governors will sort of have a bigger boost to their localized area, right? They're in one province that they are the governor of. The king, and I can't remember the exact stats, but it might be like a 5% of that boost spread throughout all of the provinces in the kingdom. Something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you get the idea, I think. Anyway, moving on. So what units do we have? This is all we have. So we have a unit of Royal Knights, which is the King's Bodyguard, and it's a 20-man unit, 21 with the King himself. Royal Knights are a powerful early game unit. Now, heavy cav or cav units in general, their full size is going to be 40 men. So bodyguard units is always going to be half the strength of a full-size unit of, what we would call them, like the feudal knights, I suppose, would be the equivalent of the Royal Knights. But the feudal knights would be a 40-man unit. So the Royal Knights, still, for this time in the game, it's going to be a strong unit, and they're going to have a good charge and good attack and good defense and all that good stuff. So, yes, powerful stuff. Now, Vikings. This is like the main reason why the Danes' early game is actually pretty easy. The Vikings are an incredible unit. Absolutely incredible. Their stats are good for this early in the game. They're relatively cheap. They only cost... They cost 131 florins to train. Is that it? Oh, the Danes got a cost decrease to training Vikings, don't they? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, interesting. You know, it's funny because the only other faction that can train Vikings is the Novgorods, and they're not even playable in the early game unless you mod them in. So, yeah, the Vikings got a faction discount for the Vikings. Otherwise, they would be, 150 florins, I think? Yeah, anyway, it's a fantastic unit, 131 florins to train. Their support cost is only 37 florins. Also, it's very manageable, I think. And then they also get a bonus versus armored troops. This is going to increase their attack if they're attacking units that have decent armor. What this means technically, like the actual like technical answer to this, is that you would take the armor of a unit and then you would divide it by 2, and you would take that answer, or that number, and you'd add it to the Vikings' attack, and it's going to increase their chances of hitting their target. It's kind of strange because it doesn't actually mitigate armor itself, but it does just give you a better attack chance versus armored units. So what that means is that when you're looking at killing low armored units, they typically just rely on, like if you're looking at like a swordsman, right? Like a feudal men-at-arms, they have a sword. They do not have a bonus versus armor, but they have a higher base attack than a Viking unit. That means that they can kill lightly armored soldiers better than Vikings can because they are not relying on their bonus versus armor to get their hits in. Vikings, however, kind of rely on this bonus versus armor to make them better than, it makes them hit above their weight essentially. And still though, they're very, very, very useful. And I'm going to use them throughout the entire game because they are the unit that is actually available to the Danes throughout the entire game. It's kind of funny because the Vikings during this time period, this campaign starts in the year 1087, and this is just like right after the Viking Age, isn't it? I'm not, just fair warning, my history is very, very rough. So if you know more than me, then feel free to correct me at any time. But yeah, I believe the Viking Age had ended a little bit before this. So this is kind of like a leftover unit, I suppose. It's like a flavor unit added by the developers to kind of give the Danes their own little thing here, which I'm happy to take. Now, in addition to the Vikings, actually, I'm not even done talking about how good they are. The thing that really makes them so good is that you can train them from just a fort. That's it. They just require a fort. Does it say that here? No, it does not. You don't need anything else. It's insane. Like a fort for other factions, you can just build peasants, right? Like there's a couple other units like Slav warriors you can train down here in the Slavic territories, or I know Hungary can train their like skirmish cavalry from a fort, but there are not many units, like good units that you can train from a fort. You can get Vikings from a fort. It takes 4 turns to build a fort. So if I take a province and start building a fort right away, 4 turns later I can train Vikings there. It's insane. It's insane how powerful that is, Like just spam Vikings, really. If you're looking for the Danish meta, just spam Vikings. Now, I'm not going to be doing that because that bores me and metas bore me. I like balanced armies, and I like playing with something that looks something, like more like an army that may have existed in a historical context. That just is what's more interesting to me. So if you ever see me using like off-meta soldiers and you're like, oh man, why is he getting his ass kicked? It's because I'm trying new things. Okay, give me a break. I can't just play with the most powerful units over and over and over again. It's too boring. All right, now am I ready to move on? Spearmen. This is the basic spearmen that's available to pretty much all the factions. And they are useful. Despite the fact that they are more expensive in their support costs than the Vikings themselves, they are going to cost 50 florins to support, but that's because they have 100-man units. Now, spearmen, that's the default number of soldiers for a spearman unit, is 100 men, as opposed to most other infantry units like swordsmen or axemen. They're going to have 60-man units. And that's going to essentially make spearmen to be a good front line, kind of it's better at holding the line and soaking up ranged damage, because it can take some casualties and still have enough depth and enough oomph to kind of hold the charge against cavalry or infantry or whatever. Obviously, it's going to work better against cavalry. They do get a bonus versus cav. And if you have them on hold formation, they're going to get a bonus to their defense. That's not just for spearmen, that's for all units, but you typically want that specifically on your spearmen because they're not really made for killing. They don't have good attack stats. Even against cav, like they can drag down some horses for sure. If you are rear charging cavalry with a unit of spearmen that's already engaged to the front, by all means, put those spearmen on engage at will, and they can, poke down those cavalry. But if they're taking a charge from the front, you're not expecting that unit to do the killing for you. That spearman unit, you just want to hold out as long as they can until something else can kill those horses for you. like a flanking charge from some Vikings or something like that. So to survive long enough for that to happen, have your men on close formation, and that's going to give them a little bit of a, I'm sorry, not close formation, hold formation. Yeah, hold formation is going to give them a +2 defense bonus, I believe. And yeah, that's going to be it for Spearmen. They're pretty, they're pretty trash, but like they do it's an early game. Give them some leeway here. It's an early game, and they are going to look elite when you compare them to this unit, the Viking Thralls. Here's the deal: the Vikings have a very flavorful early game roster, and the reason for that is because of the Viking Invasion expansion pack that came out. And I am playing a few factions, or a few campaigns on that expansion. So if you want to check that out, you can check out those campaigns. Here's the deal, though: the Viking faction for that expansion pack came out with a fully new roster, right? Because it had to basically demonstrate that was taking place during an entirely different time period than this time period, right? This is more of a Middle Ages time period, and the Viking invasion takes place more during like the Dark Ages, and the technology is very, very different. So they built an entirely new Viking roster for the Viking invasion expansion, and then they kind of like awkwardly threw these units into the grand campaign so that the Danes can like, hey, you can use these units in the early part of the campaign. Okay, neat. Here's the deal: a lot of these units don't really work in the grand campaign, and it's not necessarily because the units themselves are trash, but just because the build requirements for a lot of them are kind of weird. Now, the Viking Landsman, for example, is a very solid unit. It only costs 200 florins to train. Support cost 52. That's a bit more than the Vikings, right? This is a 60-man unit, and you're paying 52 florins to support them versus the Vikings 37 florins. And, 200 florins to train as opposed to the Vikings 131. The fact that I can't train them right out the gate, I wonder why, actually. I'm kind of confused by that. What buildings are allowing me to train Viking Landsmen? Is it just the fort? Wow. I can get Viking Landsman with just the fort as well? Holy smokes. Wow, okay. That's something. Still, they're fine unit. I probably will train some of them in this campaign. But it's not something that's like worth rushing. And especially because of their support cost is pretty prohibitive. And because I'm going to need all of the money I can get just to build my trading fleet, this is a unit that I'm not going to worry about for now. Eventually, yeah, sure. And then the Viking Thralls. The Viking Thralls, I believe, is another unit that I'm training because of the fort, right? I'm pretty sure it's just a fort level unit. Yeah, that's what it looks like. And the Viking Thralls are the #1 reason why the basic spearmen are not the worst spearmen in the game. The Viking Thralls are absolute trash. But they cost 125 florins to train, as opposed to the spearmen, which cost... Wait, can I not even... Right, I can't even train spearmen. Okay, that's kind of funny, because I have a unit of spearmen in my king's army, but I can't train any yet, because I would need to build a spearmaker, and I have not done that yet. So I can't even train spearmen, but I can train Viking Thralls from a fort, it appears. And off of my memory, I believe spearmen cost 150 florins, so these are cheaper to train up. Also, their support cost is cheaper. The basic spearman, as I think it's going to show me, it's 50, right? Yeah, 50 florins to support a basic spearman, and then it's going to be 37 for the Viking Thralls. So despite the fact that they are a trash unit, despite the fact that they are the worst spearmen in the game, they still are going to have a role. I will train these guys. They have 100 men in a unit. 100 men is valuable, no matter how trash they are. Here's what's funny about the Viking Thralls. They have a higher charge bonus than basic spearmen. I can't really think of an opportunity that you should be using. That's a lie. There are opportunities where you want to charge spears. The aforementioned opportunity where you're charging spears into the rear of a cavalry unit that's already in combat or engaged to the front, that's an opportunity. So the Viking Thralls can get more damage in that way. But the fact is their base attack and their base defense and their base morale is all lower than the basic spearmen means that this is a trash unit. Still, I will train them. In fact, I probably will just train them instead of the basic spearmen throughout the entire early game. I think. I might. It's just that the cheapness is good. It really is good at this early stage of the campaign. As I keep saying, it's a slow start for the Danes. So having cheap units is a good thing. Also, here's the thing with spearmen in this game. No matter how shitty they are, they still serve the role of deterring enemy cavalry. The AI is smart, and it knows what a spear is, and it knows what a sword is. So when they have their cavalry and they're thinking, what unit do I want to charge? Do I want to charge the unit with a spear, or do I want to charge the unit with a sword? Well, it's going to aim for the unit with a sword, or an axe. Just because those units are not going to do as well versus cavalry. Sure, axes can chop through the armor of heavy cav, yes, but they don't have the real defense stats, or they hold, like the holding stats. They only have 60 men, for instance. The Vikings, for the Vikings, that is. So they can't be broken on the charge by heavy cavalry. And the AI knows this. So even though the Viking thralls are a trash unit, if you have a line of them, and they are being backed up by archers, for instance, well, those archers are going to have a bit more time to shoot, because the cavalry might be taking its time to maneuver around your lines to try to get into your Vikings or what have you. And it provides a nice deterrence in the early game just to have spear wall, archers. It's basic, but it's pretty nice. Sure. Have your Vikings. Have them too as a nice reserve core unit that can come in and turn the tide on a flank, or they can fight off knights that get into the backfield, or whatever, But Viking thralls with archers, just basic archers, make a pretty fine early game army that can deter certain armies. Again, I'm looking at the Novgorods specifically. I will talk about them in a later episode. I don't want to get into it, but they specifically have an army that could be deterred by basic spears, Viking thralls, and archers with some Viking backup. The urban militia, this is a unit that probably will not be used at all in this campaign. Its role in any other faction's unit roster is going to be an early game bonus versus armor troop. It's really, really bad in every other way. It has bad stats, bad morale, all that stuff. Vulnerable to missiles. It does not have a shield, like the Viking unit has a shield, It's a bad unit, but for other factions that are not the Vikings, it could be one of your only options to have a bonus versus armor to help you chop down early game bodyguard units. You see, typically when you're playing, the early game, the challenge for you is going to be try to find a way. How do you kill the enemy's bodyguard units? Because those are going to be the hardest units to kill. They're on horses. They have decent armor. Whether they are the royal knights of the Catholic factions, or whether they are the Gulam bodyguards of the Muslim factions down here, or whether they are the cataphracts of the Byzantines, or whether they are the boyars of the Novgorods, you always are going to have some mounted armored unit that you need to get through. For some units, the answer is javelins. For some factions, the answer is use javelins. They can pierce armor quite well. For other factions, the answer is going to be use your urban militia. Again, they're crap, but they will help you chew through that armor. The Danes, man, who do you think they got? They got the Vikings. They just make the urban militia obsolete. There's no point. Now that I'm looking at it, okay, they are cheaper. So I will give them that. And their support cost is also cheaper as well, at only 30 florins. But still, I think the Vikings are just going to be too hard to pass up. Am I ready to move on? Am I finally ready to play my first turn? Let's see. Do I have family members to talk about? Yes. So I have 2 sons. One is only 4 years away. You become they will become of age at the age of 16. So he is 4 years away before he becomes of age. And then I have Prince Eric, who is 8 years away. I also have a princess on the way as well. And I'm not training any emissaries. No, I can't. Gosh darn. Okay. Man, I like having agents. Yeah, that's gonna make me nervous. Oh well. So yeah, I can't do agents for a while. Let's keep looking on here. No agents there. I'm going to be making 26 florins. Holy shit. Oh god. Okay. And this is just the alliance faction page. Obviously, no one's friends with anyone yet. And yeah, that's that. We've already looked at that. And just my armies. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So now what I'm going to do is attack Sweden on the first turn. And what I'm going to do is something that I've only practiced once. And it worked, but it's risky. I'm going to attack Sweden with just my king. My king and his bodyguard. And the reason for that is because this is an army of 2 Viking units. And in Norway, there's an army of 4 Viking units, I believe. And it would be best to fight these armies separately. If you attack this 2 Viking unit army here in Sweden with anyone except just your king, and I mean anyone, even if just you bring, just, you know, if you trained up an archer and brought an archer, doesn't matter. They will retreat. It's not the worst thing in the world. Taking Sweden is nice, but fighting 4 Vikings in Norway instead of 6 Vikings is quite nice because, as you can imagine, well, actually, I haven't even said this yet, so you can't imagine, but Norway does give a +1 valor bonus to Viking units. So the Vikings that you'll be fighting in Norway are going to be better than your Vikings that you can train here in Denmark. So fighting only 4 of them as opposed to 6 is going to be better. The trick is beating 2 units of Vikings with 1 unit of Royal Knights. Not the easiest thing in the world, honestly. I mean, I've just gotten done talking about how good Vikings are at killing armored things. Yeah, look, it's not... I'm a little nervous about this, but I think that I can pull it off. I think I can. So now what unit do I want to train here in Denmark? It's really tempting to just go peasants right off the bat because I like to have units to garrison my castle or my fort. It's always nice to have a 100-man unit garrisoning a province when you leave it, just because even if you check the population loyalty and you go, hey, the population loyalty is fine, and then you press end turn, if you don't have any units garrisoning a province, in particular, the message that will pop up it'll be like a bandit rebellion or like a bandit something. You'll get bandits. You have to fight them. You have to kill them. And it's a unique type of rebellion. It happens specifically because you did not leave a 100-man unit to garrison your province, and that's it. Like, that's why you train peasants. That's the only reason. Peasants come in 100-man units. They are cheap to train. Their support cost is, fine. You don't want them to fight at all, really, but they are just to garrison provinces. That's it. That's one of the differences between Shogun 1 and Medieval 1. In Shogun 1, as long as your people are fine, as long as your population loyalty is fine, and you can have a shinobi in every province like I do to keep population loyalty, good, it's going to be fine. Like in Shogun, as long as like you check your provinces at the end of the turn, you're like, okay, everything's good, you press end turn, it will be fine in Shogun. In Medieval Total War, you can do that, but if you don't have that 100-man unit in a province, you'll be like, hey, no, everything's good. Press enter, and like, nope, you'll get bandits because you didn't have a 100-man unit in that province. So my guess is that I probably should just build my 1 unit of peasants because these guys will eventually be moving on up to Sweden soon-ish. Or I could do a Viking. Let's see, how much do archers cost? Archers cost 225 to train, 37 florins for support. I should have some of them, honestly, to help me kill the Vikings in Norway. And since I don't even have any to start with, yeah, let's train an archer. And then what should I build? The watchtowers. Always, always, always. I like the watchtowers in this game because they only cost 100 florins to build, and they only take 1 turn to build, as opposed to the watchtowers in Shogun 1, which takes 200 koku and 2 turns. It feels just, it's a little bit prohibitive. It honestly is. It does the same thing. What it does is it's going to allow me to have some vision on all of my neighboring provinces. For Denmark, not much, just Saxony. But it will allow me to see this army's composition here in Saxony, and it would allow me to do that in Sweden too, but I'm going to take it in this turn. what the border watchtower also does is that it also does improve the population loyalty. I think it says it here. Yeah, this is not just a few watchtowers, it's a whole network of watchtowers along the borders and beacons to connect them. They keep an eye on military activity in neighboring provinces, giving almost as much information as a spy would. So it doesn't say anything there about population loyalty, but it does improve it by, I think, 10%. And then the upgrade to the watchtower, which is the border fort, will increase it by a further 5%. So, and also the border fort just takes another turn to build. So when I take a new province, I pretty much almost automatically, almost every single time, do a watchtower, border fort, just right away. Because the first thing I want to not worry about when I take a new province is population loyalty. It's a pretty automatic thing for me. So let's see, do I want to mess with the taxes? I feel like probably should just stick it at high. And then I will drop a save because this game can be a little bit unstable from time to time. And I will finally play my first turn. So there we have it. That's the 2 units of Vikings that I was just talking about. And there's my king. Man, this is do or die for him. And we get a little map of the province. Looks like there's going to be a nice little lake in the middle. Okay, that's cool. A little house there as well. Let's go in and check it out for ourselves. We are greeted with fine weather here in Sweden. And there they are. Yeah, they're going to be pretty tight together to start off the battle. So let's come over here, and it's going to be important to try to get them to separate from one another so that I can get a charge in on the general's unit, which is going to be the unit with the square flag. And if I can get a charge in on him and then break him first, then that's going to give a morale debuff to the other unit of Vikings, and then potentially I can clean up both units. So see, now they're going... See, I don't want them to go for the forest. So let's see if I can... Oh, nope. Nope, nope, nope. Not like that. Not like that. Not like that. Although I did kill some of them. Actually, yeah, I got 9 kills and I lost 1 of the bodyguards. So that wasn't the worst trade in the world. So let's see if I can come out here and get a charge in on the general here. Or if the other unit's going to intercept me, maybe I just kill them first. Let's see if I can pull back. Cycle charging can be a lot harder in these games, in Shogun and Medieval, because enemy units can be a lot stickier. Yeah, let's see if I can get the general to kind of get further away. Let's see if I can get a little charge in now. Yeah, if we can just kill him instantly. I know he's right there. He's right in the front. So killing the general would be really good. And let's, yep. Half the guys are dying. He's right in the front. If we could just kill him before the support unit comes around the flank. There we go. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Alright, let's try to get out of there. The nice thing about the casualties that I'm taking here on this unit is that they will be replenished over time. Don't get hacked down. No, no. Alright, so let's see if we can get another charge in. 11 of my guys. These units are both at kind of half health because if we could get a good charge in. It says they're losing slightly. Losing badly. 10 of my Royal Knights. I'm afraid that if I withdraw again, then I will lose a lot more men. They've been holding firm. They're kind of holding okay. And it says the Vikings are losing badly. You would think with the loss of their general, it would break. I mean, yeah, just lost one guy right there. So yeah, it looks like we're gonna hack through them. I can't believe the Vikings are still hanging on here, man. They have good morale, they do. This unit has good morale. The good news about this, though, is that once they do finally break, there we go. And now I'm going to get all of them. Because they actually stood and fought for so long, I'm going to be able to run down all of these units, I think. Let's see, 16 here and 14 there. Yeah, let's hope that I can get all of these guys killed so that none of them can escape to Norway. No, looks like that other unit's going to get away. That's too bad. Okay, so, yep, I killed 85. I did capture 22 guys. I lost 16, but again, I think that those men will be replenished, and the important thing is that my king survived. And his remaining men in that bodyguard unit did gain 3 valor, so that's pretty gosh darn good. And of course, we get this slapping soundtrack, which is awesome in the victory screen. Yeah, really cool stuff. So now that we're gonna get a decision on what to do with the rebels. So yes, I've taken Sweden. Yes. Rebels captured. So yeah, I captured 22 of them. My understanding with this is that there's not much here. Unfortunately, there's not much of a decision to make. So I have captured a number of rebels, their lands have been confiscated, and now you must decide their fate. And this whole value of confiscated lands, I have seen this number do nothing. I don't know what this does. No matter what button I press, I've never seen that number add anything or subtract or do anything with my bottom line for my for the money that I have. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's kind of an unfinished feature in this game by the devs. As far as the decisions that we have to make, well, execute them all, execute the ringleaders, and then release them all. My understanding is that this just has something to do with the traits that can be gained by the general of that battle, in this case, my king. And so if you execute them, he's going to get a trait that's it's going to give him a dread, an extra point of dread or something like that. What does dread do? Well, dread increases the loyalty of your lands. Release them all. That's going to give a mercy trait, which is going to increase happiness. Happiness is just the same thing as dread. It just increases the loyalty of your people. So mercy and then dread, it feels like it's almost the same thing, kind of. The only difference is that each of these traits, there's chains of them. So you can chain them and they can get deeper and deeper within whatever stats that you're getting from them. So if you have if you keep on doing execute them all over and over and over again, you're eventually going to have a really bad dread trait, which might have a downside to it. I don't have all of the vices and virtues memorized, but it gets to the end of the line where it gets a little bit too much and there's a downside or something. And same thing with the mercy trait as well. So my understanding with this is that you can kind of balance between mercy and dread, but you might want to pick the neutral option, which is execute the ringleaders, which doesn't add anything to your mercy trait or your dread trait. Here's the thing. Despite everything that I just said, there's rarely going to be a general or a king that you have long enough that's killing that many rebels, that you have leading that many battles against that many rebel provinces where any of this matters at all. Because this is just for rebels. You did not get this screen for capturing other factions' territories. This is just for rebel territories. So it's kind of funky. It's a funky thing. I wonder if manufacturing civil wars so that you can kill a civil war army is technically a rebel army. And maybe by manufacturing civil wars, you can manufacture a way to get the exact right trait for the exact right king and the exact right circumstance. Maybe there's something there where you can do that to it. But again, I don't have the traits memorized well enough so that I can tell you exactly what you need to do to accomplish that. So if this is something that you have more experience with, I'd love to hear your take on it, because I'm not that I'm lost, but I feel like it's more shallow than it appears. Anyway, I'll just release them all. I will take the mercy trait for now. And then the people of Novgorod have somehow managed to convince their commoners that they are content. No one has such unwavering support from their populace. Okie dokie. And right away, we have an Italian emissary who's here to talk to us, looks like. Awesome. That'd be kind of cool. I would take an alliance with the Italians. Sure, why not? And do we get any other thing? No, we did not. So we just get one extra point for conquering Sweden. That's already pretty gosh darn good. Sweden itself, obviously very unhappy. Let's bring taxes down to very low, and loyalty is still very bad. So let's bring up some more units. Loyalty is now going to be 89%. And I think it's a little risky. You never really want to like leave a province completely undefended, but what you can do is just at this point train up that unit of peasants. That's going to be there in this province during the end turn. So that will factor into or other factions whether or not they want to attack or not. Oh, they have Vikings. Oh, the Germans actually have Vikings. I did not know that. Okay, cool. But I do not think the Germans are going to attack me, even though it looks scary not having a unit in place. Having those peasants, I'm pretty sure, will count towards my population loyalty and my, my anti-bandits rebellion type thing going into the next turn. Let me look at my archers and see if they have good acumen. Nope, they have shit acumen. They have zero acumen. They can't count at all. They don't even know how many arrows they have. Yeah, I'm still looking for a governor for Denmark because I'm just going to wait until I find someone with 4 acumen. Although, damn, the governorship of Denmark gives command and loyalty. Okay, that's a good one. That's something that you'd want to give to like a good general, actually. Interesting. Okay. Well, here in Sweden, so... Even though I said that I always go Watchtower Border Fort, just because there is no fortification here, I'm tempted to go straight to Fort first. It's going to take 4 turns, so I may as well get that started. And that's going to give me a base from which I can train some Vikings, and I can keep training archers from Denmark, and I can go in and take Norway. But that is all going to have to wait until next time. That's going to be it for this episode. Yep, I spent pretty much all of my time just kind of explaining the starting position for the Danes, and yeah, it's going to be a slow opening. I just want to, again, warn you for a second or third time that, it's going to take some time to get the trade set up for the Danes, and from there, things can really get going. But yeah, it's gonna be a little while. In any case, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and if you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section down below. And until then, this has been Concept playing Medieval Total War. Thank you very much, and goodbye.